recording. All right. Emily, making sure you can hear us. Can you hear us? Okay. Okay, good.
I can. Thank you.
Very good. All right. So I have
the admin finally joined us.
Yeah, finally the admin has joined us. Ken, you look very familiar. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize your name before.
That's all. I had to turn my video on because of eating. I was eating when you.
Yeah, evidently Tori doesn't mind eating in front of everybody. So thank you for doing that, Ken.
Hey, we weren't started yet. It's not recorded.
All right, that's wonderful. All right, here comes our president now. So good. All right. Well, and on that topic about the question mark in the background, so many people come to me and they start a sentence or they engage with the icebreaker is, I've got a question for you, or can I ask you a question? And that is so often the question or the starting point. And a couple of people said, you know, I'm sorry, I'm going to quit doing that. And I'm like, well, then how are you starting this conversation from now on? I still have a question for you. So that's very common. We see that a lot as facilities managers, I'm sure.
And as a smart aleck, I usually say, can I ask you a question? No.
I usually say that was your question.
Very good.
Welcome, Homer.
Hey, Christine, how are you? All right, so Mr. President, I guess it is past time. I've started the recording. Are you going to lead us off here?
Yep.
That'd be great. I'll keep an eye on who keeps popping on. We're up to 11 locked on now.
Yeah, Jeff should be locked in.
What was that?
Jeff should be jumping on any minute.
Okay. Well, he's got to find a really small room and a giant TV. Tori, you want to go ahead and lead us off?
Yeah, totally. Jesus, thank you for today and thank you for his time for all of us to get together, Lord. Just help us, direct us in what you want us to do in your home and show us, you know, how to bring people to you, Lord. And as we're traveling and as people are coming back together, just keep everybody safe and healthy, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. I got to pull up the questions here. Give me just a minute.
Christine,
I just want to tell you guys, COVID is not fun.
COVID, who's doing COVID?
Me, my mother, and my father all tested positive.
Yeah, but which letter of the alphabet? The Greek alphabet?
I think the omega or the alpha. I don't know. It's a primary. So let's see. Sean Foster on?
Yes, he did. He joined us. Yes.
Cool. Hey, Sean, why don't you go ahead and open up with your question?
Oh, I don't have, this is the first time I've got to do this. So I'm just listening to all you all. So I'm just sitting back and just watching for right now.
Well, you had a couple questions you put on when you signed up.
Oh, well, actually I met Lara. So we're actually neighbors. She's in North Tampa. And so we were actually looking at switching to the, to eSpace in January. And so Lara's using that over at Grace Family and we're going to switch to it. And so I just kind of pros and cons for everybody who's using it. That's kind of the avenue we're looking at going to. We're on Service U right now and they no longer support that. And it's just gotten so clunky over the last couple of years. And with being multi-site and just with having our academy, the eSpace thing is really where we're leaning towards. So any pros or cons, anybody's got anything, I'd love to hear from you.
We've been using it now for a year. And just to be able to separate work orders, communication, when you want things done, it follows up with you, you know, and it's a great program. I love it.
I'm with Celebration Church in Austin, Texas. We have been using it now for about over 4 to 5 years. And so pros, obviously, the communication within your team is great. As your property grows or your building grows or changes, it's really important to make sure you update it though, because then it can cause confusion within your own camp kind of deal. If you don't have somebody who's maintaining it regularly. So is that room really available? And depending if you're connecting it with your AC system, we do that here. You can run a report and it can run with a scheduler for your AC system. That can be kind of a make or break if a room gets AC or doesn't get AC based on the schedule. So that's just some things. Yes, it works really well. It's just those little tidbits within behind the scenes that help with it.
And I can't
Did I
remember.
answer your question there, Sean?
I think it's different now.
I can't remember if I mentioned this to you when we met, Sean, but one of the things that is extremely helpful for me in doing exactly what Emily said in updating it is that we only open it up 6 months at a time. So that right before I get ready to open it up for a particular port for the next 6 months, which we do. So for example, we opened it up the beginning of November for January through June of 2022. That gives me an opportunity to look at all of the spaces and make sure that no changes have been made, that something hasn't changed in terms of its availability or the resources that are available in that space, and make those adjustments before we go into that next season. So I always know that I can live with what I need to live with for 6 months, and then I can fix it and for the next period of time. But that just keeps me on top of that.
Lara, just to clarify, when you say open it up, you're meaning booking space in the building, not the interface, the API.
Correct. Yes. Booking space in the building. Yes. I block our staff from being able to book anything from July, for a 6-month period of time until we're ready to open it up for that. Now they can create a draft of an event that they know is going to happen. For example, we had graduations that we knew would happen in May that were already booked in August and September of the previous year. So they created a draft of it. And as soon as I opened it up for them to be able to actually schedule it, they went into their drafts and submitted them.
Very good. So just to clarify the question that Sean had about facility software, tools, and resources, what all are you using eSpace for? Now, Emily mentioned timing and HVAC. What about door programming, unlocking the building? How about time clocks for your employees or tracking hours? How about reimbursements to employees that use expenses? Are those the kind of things, or is it just maintenance, or does it also include preventative maintenance, mean routine work orders?
On our end, okay.
Right now, since we're sort of new with it, we're just doing the maintenance part of it. Tracking and separating for each guy. We can schedule each guy, what he gets work orders wise. That's as far as we've gone with it at this point. And that is huge compared to just having the emails.
You were going to say, Emily?
We actually just about a year ago got off of using the work order side of it. Our church is in a transition of using Monday.com for a lot of requests like that. But I will say something you can do through eSpace is schedule regular maintenance things through your work order system. And so for us, everything from checking irrigation systems to replacing air filters in the air conditioning units, we had regular, you can establish regular requests that come in this first of every month or however you want to schedule that. That is definitely an option through eSpace. And what I also like through the scheduler side, because as we know, it's 2 parts, the space scheduler side, is that you can actually block off a room from being used. So when we were doing construction projects on site, we were able to block off those rooms from being reserved by our other ministries to be used. So it was really beneficial.
So normally on these discussions, when questions about software come up, we do discuss how there's a lot of options out there, a lot of options, and not focus in on one vendor or one specific product. And is the thing with what Emily just said was that so many different products do different things, but as you apply a product, as Tori just indicated, you've got to have the processes that work with the product. So in Lara's example, she sees that her process of only opening up so many months works really well with that product. So every product's gonna be a little different. At Faith, we use FMX and we do a whole year. So we will have an all leadership team meeting and say, give us all the big things that are gonna go on this calendar for the year. We open up to the next fiscal year, which is August 30th. And we allow people to book out to that point. Anything after that is just, they can book it, but we're not necessarily going to recognize it until that new year starts. And they don't necessarily have that booking. But we do use it to program doors, but it's not directly tied to doors, meaning someone has to sit down and look to see what the request was in that. But we do use it for PMs. And some people look at these products like eSpace and they're driving their asset management, warranties, when to replace bearings, lubrication. And that's a primary goal of them. It's not about event-driven stuff. It's more maintenance-driven. And so then the product you choose and how you deploy it matters because of what you're using it for. I hope that helps.
All righty. He had another question on there. Sean did about in-house versus outsourcing and cleaning and grounds. So Sean, tell us a little bit about that.
So currently we have all 5 of our campuses are shopped out with the same contract cleaner. And so we've kind of gone back and forth on in-house, out-of-house. So our main campus has about 350,000 square foot of building, 500 kids at the academy. So it's pretty busy place. I'm leaning towards keeping it out of house, just, managing personality wise, because the initial upstart of buying all the equipment and everything is really kind of holding us back. So I just wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that, because we would probably need a team of 8 to 10, part-time and full-time people, and probably one director with that.
Well, let me say before we forget to say it, as an NACFM team, we want you to drive yourself and your questions to our forums and our website. If you go to our website and log in as a member there and then use that search bar searches every research paper that's published, every resource we have links to, and even in our forums, keywords in our forums will pop up. So this question does come up a lot. And so if you take the time to maybe read back through some old posts to see where people's heads were and how they answer those questions, they're going to help lead you to thinking about how you would answer those questions. And you would answer them differently at every campus, especially with different leadership. But please go to our website and click on that. And I know there's several research papers about outsourcing just custodial or insourcing, or just the common question about insourcing or outsourcing.
Yeah, that's definitely a great source of information, a great source to pose a new question. I mean, this particular question has crossed the forum a couple times, and there's a lot of great answers to it. My last church, we had in staff for a while, and we went to contracted, and we had the same, both come with their own same problems, their own same, challenges. So it just really depends on how you approach it, and how you deal with it. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with
I
that.
have.
Somebody that has outsourcing right now, I'd like to hear from them.
Well, I am not a facility manager. I'm a potential vendor. And I can tell you from somebody that's trying to hire people all over the country right now, I would not venture into trying to hire my own crew. It is very difficult trying to get people right now. So you've got a contractor that's remotely working for you, I'd say stick with them for right now based on our experience trying to hire people. And we are trying to hire people, and we are paying very well and still struggling. And it's relatively basic level work. It's very much custodial type skill that we're looking for, and having a doozy of a time trying to find people.
Yeah, we outsource. We have been using the same company for years and years, since before I was even the director of facilities here at St. Gabriel. It does have its challenges. You don't have nearly as much control over stuff, and you're kind of out there, if they're not doing a great job, you've got to go through their chain of command to get the, to have the issues resolved. But just like he just said, I wouldn't want to go out and have to try to hire these crews and then worry about them having sick days and vacation days where you have to backfill them and have backups like that. All the equipment on top of it.
This is Jeff from Colorado. We've outsourced our cleaning for a number of years. There's some great advantages to it if you can get a good company. We use ServiceMaster, and they are nationwide, and they're independently owned. The owner of ServiceMaster is why we are still using them. He is on everything that I call him for. When I originally wanted to hire them, I told them that it was a requirement for them to meet me here at the church at 5:30 in the morning to help me open the building, because not every crew, not every janitor does exactly what you want. Even the best, they miss stuff. And so by the time I'm opening the building in an hour and a half, I've got a list of items that need to be done before we get our guests coming in our building. And so he does stuff throughout the time we open. He makes an effort to meet me every Sunday, and we're going to be, I believe, ServiceMaster, the national account, is going to purchase a vendor booth at our conference in Colorado. So you got to come see them. But I'd give thumbs up. And it's all about the owner, I'm sure, but that's why we're still keeping them. And it's business, but he feels very connected with us here at the church, and he likes what we're doing. We have a school with over 130 churches that send their kids to our school. We have the largest daycare in Colorado, and he does it well. And so, yeah, and it's hard to hire, like the gentleman said before, especially for a church. You want somebody with a servant mind, servant attitude. Doesn't matter about their skills, but there you go.
And I'll just jump on that, Jeff. By the way, I'm in Colorado also. We're finally maybe going to get some snow this week. To back up what Jeff just said, I've been in commercial property industry for years, and had a lot of interactions with ServiceMaster in different places and multiple ServiceMasters in different cities. And Jeff hit the nail on the head. It has everything to do with the owners, everything. Because I've had nightmare experiences and I've had dream experiences. So not to bash ServiceMaster in any way and not to elevate them, the owner is what makes the difference.
I would champion that as well. And we've used Janiking, which is a similar model. The owner has a franchise of sorts. You get that good owner. But for me, it's been about service level agreements, the relationship through documenting well what your expectations are, and are they achieving those expectations in routine meetings with them. Those alternatives that Sean's asking about, meaning do you do it in-house? The pros and cons exist on both sides. And the Texas Co-op, for instance, would give this lesson and talk about in-source or outsource. Or at our certification program, we talk a lot about that in every key area, like grounds and landscaping. Do you in-source or outsource? And every one of them, there's these similarities to, you have to manage people, you got to pay workers' comp, you got to have safety and insurance, but then you have to manage people. And so with the outside contractor, they may not have the flexibility to cover churches that have a very weird, flexible schedule. Whereas your in-house people will pull the same thing on you. For instance, the Christmas holidays, they all want to take off, and you want them to get to take off, but then you still need the building clean.
Yeah, I can speak. Can y'all hear me? Okay. I can speak to we use an outside service. I'm Spencer. I'm just outside of Atlanta in the metro area. We've been using, I inherited a housekeeping company when we started here. And you know, we've had some bumps and bruises along the way, but they do a great job, and they're really easy. I think ours is not a franchise, the one that we use. It's just a guy, and he actually uses his cleaning business as a ministry to you know, support people in the community who need work, who have had a kind of a sordid past. So we've had some things disappear from time to time, but still, in spite of that, we have a great relationship with the same company we've been using the 7 years that I've been here, and many years before that. So I see a lot of advantage in using outside company, and we also use same thing, almost exact same situation with our landscaping. And we're a I wouldn't say a small church, but we're not a big church. We're not like a mega church by any means. But we've got enough facility, and we've got enough grounds that if we were to bring in outside people, you know, I don't know that I have a feeling we'd probably be spending more money. But in the long term, I think the benefits that we've derived from it have they've been pretty good, especially being that it's a single guy owns the company. I can call him anytime and be like, hey, you missed something, come back over here, or hey, we got a thing going on this weekend, you know, that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm all for using outside companies.
Hey, Chris, I gotta take a call with my parents.
Very good.
Will you take over for a minute?
I'll be glad to. Yes. Thank you, Homer.
Thanks.
So in keeping with Sean, as the guy we rolled to the top of our spreadsheet for questions, he also asked about multi-site staffing, and that's sort of in that same line with in-house and outhouse. Outhouse is a bad word. I'm sorry. That was terrible. So Sean, we do have a few FMs, especially Lara, who experiences a lot of different sort of what I would call campuses or multi-site. And so that is a concern. And that software you talked about can help manage that. For instance, the FMX software that we use allows you to put separate buildings in there. Now I have multi-buildings, but we treat it as one building in my software. Whereas if you had to drive across the street, we might call that a separate building. And all your work orders can be driven by building, and then you can assign them by building. You have technicians that get just those buildings work orders or requests and so forth. What was sort of your thoughts when you asked that question about multi-site staffing?
I mean, Larry and I actually talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and so the way she has it set up, actually, is I really didn't think of it this way. She runs everything out of kind of the main campus, you know, main hub, however wordage y'all want to use, and the eSpace thing really helps with that. So that's one reason we're looking at moving to that. As our campuses grow, I can give the guys an iPad and go, hey, here you go. You're going around each campus today. The question that I had with that, though, is like one of our campuses, the guy who currently oversees it, he lives 3 minutes away. So it would kind of be at a disadvantage for him to travel 35 minutes to the main campus just to come back down there. We're not really at that level yet where all the campuses require multi-day setups every day, because some of the campuses are in a storefront, they're only used once a week, that type of thing. So I think, Larry, you had said, I guess if you were hiring, you tell them that up front, I think is what you had said on that. Like you're working out of this campus and you'll be hitting all the other ones.
Yes. So we actually, as of August, went from using an outside company, as we discussed, and an inside facilities team, a combination of the two, to just bringing it all central. So we got rid of our outside cleaning company altogether. And we had most of our existing facilities team had been assigned to a particular campus. And when we brought them all together, we worked hard to try to make sure that the people who lived close to, like we have 6 campuses, soon to be 7, that the people who worked closest to a set of campuses, that was the team that worked those particular campuses. And the same thing for the other set. So we kind of have a north and a south group. We've had some natural attrition since then. So whereas the existing team, we tried to keep them as close to their existing place as possible. And then their weekend support service. So they were always covering services at the campus that they had previously covered. So that was, what they already had, and that was great. But now as we move forward, as those people have left and we've brought on a new team, we set the expectation of all new staff that they could go to any of our 6 campuses, depending. And we do still try for each of the campuses. It's good for the people to know each of their campuses really well. So we do still try to have the 2 different teams, although now it's become more of it's the things you learn in 3 or 4 months. We really now have more of a cleaning team that will go to each of the campuses, and their focus is to clean. And then the other team will be going and doing setups and teardowns and minor repairs. So those people will be training to do some additional things like painting and changing light bulbs and things that our technicians team do, so that we have the opportunity to grow them up. Because one of the things that I have, and I'll just throw this in here, it's because of this particular group and this particular organization and what I have seen from being at conference and all about people who have grown up in the church in facilities, that I have such a heart for that. And I believe that there are people out there, whereas we typically had just hired college kids who are working to, on top of college. I really now am trying to find people who want to grow up in the church and want to know our buildings and have a heart for what that we do, so that we can train them up and give them a good career at Grace Family Church. So that's kind of where we all are. Sorry, long answer.
Lara, can I just piggyback on you? You mentioned you have a cleaning crew that goes in, and then you have a setup crew that goes in. We used to do that. I've combined both of them because the cleaning crew would happen to go in first, clean everything, and then the setup crew goes in and moves everything, because you convert it from a school to a church, from a church to a school, and then it needs to be re-vacuumed. So that may be something else to consider, I guess, on this. But
yeah, unfortunately, the women, and sadly, it's just that it's the women who are cleaning can't do the setup and tear down. They physically can't. And
Gotcha.
My setup and tear down team is not really great at cleaning, but we don't have school either. So that is one of the things we change between our groups. Our groups make a lot of adjustments. All of our property is multifunctional, but it is mostly, setting up and tearing down for small groups and things like that. But I completely get that. Our setup and tear down crew still needs to be able to do some spot cleaning and to be able to restock bathrooms and things like that, so that we can make the best use of everybody's time and be efficient.
Man,
but I love that feedback. Thank you, Jeff.
let me add to that, Sean, because the questions you're asking sort of indicate that you're on the front end of something here. And let me add that a foundation laid well is better than chasing your tail for the next couple of years. So in multiple examples you've heard in our forum already in this roundtable, everyone has different perspectives, and some are coming into something that's already been set up and they're modifying it, changing it, renovating it. Others are starting from scratch, or they're growing with the church. If you lay a foundation of procedures and policies, and I know I'm the guy, keep saying that, then you have something to build upon, and those things become the bad guys, and then you can review them and edit them. And I would say an employee handbook is an example of some of this. And in the handbook, it will say, do you get reimbursed for travel? When do you get to claim your travel? And if you've got people driving at multi-site, are they using the church van or the church vehicle? Do they claim their mileage? Those are those foundational entry levels or basic things that make the system begin to run smoothly, such as a good piece of software. And does the software properly send work orders to the right person? And can you behind the scenes make sure the right person's getting that work order so that the wrong person's not driving an extra 30 miles. So just laying those foundations, those early procedural items, a good handbook, training checklist of making sure you've said what people in the past have done. And you heard Lara say there's turnover. So good training guidelines help with preparing for that turnover, because now people get trained as you have that turnover.
I have a follow-up for Laura on what she commented on. Your setup crew and your cleaning crew, are they employees or are they contractors?
Employees.
Very good, thank you.
All
So we
right.
cover all that pretty good, folks?
Yes, so that was Sean's questions. We just went back to Sean again there, Homer.
Okay. All right. All right, we have a question for somebody who hasn't logged in yet. Bringing your buildings up to fire codes. Anybody had problems with that?
The only problems I run into is when the fire marshal decides just to add things randomly that they weren't talking about before, like putting additional signage on electrical rooms and things like that. It's like, you've been coming into my building every year for years, and this is something you just came up with. So
There's a significant,
always you probably keep it too neat and tidy, and he wants to add something just for the fun of it.
I always have to find something to ding you on. That's what I'm thinking.
you got to prop a door open with a rubber stopper.
Yeah, I take a couple of covers off of electrical boxes or whatever, just to give them some low-hanging fruit.
I think for me, I've learned when the fire marshal comes is it something that if I didn't do a renovation or an upfit, that I'm grandfathered because that was original architectural design? Or is it a type of code change that I've got to get up to speed because I'm in a certain municipality? So I wouldn't call it pushback, but I would say, let me go to the architect, let me look at my drawings, and not knee jerk with whatever that fire marshal said right away. And he could shut you down, I know, and make life miserable. But I would say, am I not grandfathered in if it was something the architect had got approved and it was a part of the building construction?
Yeah, from my understanding, they work. We don't work for them. They work for us in a way. I mean, it's always been said in the years I've been NACFM is get to know your fire marshal. Sometimes you're way too busy. Big giant cities. Other cities are small. You can get to know them. Maybe take them out to lunch. Actually invite them to your building and have them really tear it apart. I've been fortunate. All the churches I've worked at, we've had no fire marshals. We've only had code inspectors in the front end of the remodel or the construction, but nothing in the back end to check it. Now we do have all the rules to maintain our fire extinguishers, maintain our alarm systems, maintain our sprinklers. But never really, it was always up to me to set the code. And of course, then you start talking about actual fire hazards like, 4 million candles in the sanctuary on Christmas Eve. I watched the pastor take the fire code and drop it in his circular file cabinet. He says, "Thank you, we're up to date." That was my first rude awakening on that. Anybody else had some unusual or interesting outcomes from building codes?
I had one
I
where
love.
go ahead.
Oh, gotta say love. I live that. You gotta love Cintas for how much they want to charge you for your annual inspection. Who all's been down that road before? Hey, see that sprinkler head that's 40 feet in the air? I can see paint on it.
Yeah, I have another company that I use, American Fire Protection at the moment here in the Dallas area, or I guess APS, I guess. But then they come up with these things that are like that I didn't know about. Like there's a 20-year inspection on some sprinkler heads where they got to take some off and send them out for testing because they think they have a 20-year lifespan. So that kind of dings you when you're not expecting that. And then they misread an area. They think it's a preschool, not a school or not a daycare. So it doesn't need as many smoke alarms. There's, oh no, you got to put all these smoke alarms in, and then they and then you come back and say, well, no, I don't. Where's the code say that?
So I give you an example you just reminded me of, is that we had a piece of property, a brick house we call it, on our property that we were going to convert to using it just as for some faith groups and let some adult faith groups in there during the week. Well, fire marshal says, well, that's called classroom. And because it's called classroom, that brick house now has to meet this code. And so I was really changing use. And because I changed use in a commercial district, I really should have submitted a change of use permit and got it inspected. So I kind of, not following all the rules, I kind of broke the rules there. He did come up with every extreme requirement. I have 3 ramps on that brick house. I have exit lights at each ramp. You can't exit through the kitchen of the brick house. What home doesn't go through the kitchen? So that really hurt. But change of use, what Ken just mentioned, if you're changing the use of a space, that you really could be affecting fire code, and that's you changing the original design of sorts. Because if the architect wrote that room down as classroom and it's now nursery, that changes the use of that room. And it seems simple to a lot of FMs to just repaint a room and change something like a door swing. But if the use of the room changes, you kind of have changed the fire code.
And you have to watch your verbiage too when you're walking around with the fire marshal. We have a dry building on our east campus, and because we extended our stage, they wanted us to put in a wet pipe, but it's how we worded it. So it was now turned into a drama department. So that canceled the wet pipe, them wanting us to put in a wet pipe. So you got to look it up and just see, and then you got to tell them, well, we're only allowing this many people in this area. So that helps as well. But like everybody else has said, communication, we get inspected once a year on 4 of my campuses. It's just the relationship. Putting up a sign on a door, I'll do it every day. I won't care. But it's the other parts that I'll question, like when we got written up because how I communicated, oh, we extended our stage. Well, that's what he wrote it down as. So once I changed the verbiage to the drama area, it canceled all that code. So you have to watch it.
Verbiage is important.
Yep.
So anybody else want to add anything to that subject? All right, moving on. Lee, we're going to go to you. You want to go ahead and explain your question?
We've got, we try to hire in-house as much as possible, people for the facilities team and the cleaning team and all that sort of stuff. And because the people we found out that are plugged into the ministry have skin in the game, and they tend to do a better job if we can. It's not always possible, when to find that many people in a congregation that want to do that work, but we start there anyway. And one of the things in a church that we found out is people come with a lot of baggage. And I've got this as an example. I've got one guy, young guy, got a lot of want to, plugged into all the different ministries, and very, very much a person I would want to hire really quickly. But in the past, say five or 6 years ago, he was into drugs and his life was in the toilet, and he ended up with a police record. Well, when we hire somebody, of course, we do the drug tests and the background checks, and the background check, of course, shows that he's had run-ins with police in the past, and that's kicked him out with our executive pastor and our head of school, and rightfully so. I respect them and their decisions. But in trying to round up help, especially these days, I find that it's more difficult to find people that will even apply. When I put in the application process that we're going to be running a background check and a drug screen, they won't even apply anymore. So that's part of my issue is I can't even get applications if I put that in the job description. And I put it in there early just because they're going to get kicked out anyway later. So how are you all doing that? Are you bending the rules back in order to hire people that have, maybe a police record in their past or, something like that? How is everybody else doing it?
Lee, do you have a school too?
Yeah, we got 750 kids.
Yeah, that's probably the big problem there.
It is. It is.
It definitely depends.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I would say it definitely depends on the type of record they have and how long ago it was. My director of my project manager for our company, he's a recovering addict. He was a vet in the Green Beret, and he got hooked on painkillers after getting back from Afghanistan. And he submitted himself for recovery to the Veterans Board, and literally hasn't had a hiccup since then. And if I had kicked him out because of that, I wouldn't have probably one of my absolute best employees. And another employee a while back that's no longer with us, he left on his own terms for other reasons and great reasons. But he also had something on his record, and turns out it was classified as evading police. I got further into it, and basically it was even on the record that he did not know a cop was coming after him on something, and the cop classified it as evading police. And so that was on his record forever. And again, I left my 9-year-old on a project with him one day, and I looked at her and I looked at him. I said, "You guys know who I trust here?" And he kind of got all shy about it. And my daughter said, "You trust me with Charles?" I said, "Absolutely." And I had 6 employees on that site, and he was the one that I trusted with my 9-year-old daughter. And so I definitely think it depends on the criminal history. And I think we need to be careful and show God's grace and mercy in that as much as we can, and hopefully be as wise as serpents also.
Amen.
So one of the things I kind of have a heart for mentoring, especially younger guys, and bringing them into the ministry. Facilities I treat as a ministry, and I try to teach these guys, to work as a ministry. And if these guys have, like something in their background, I can't even bring them on. Where, I said to my executive pastor, where are they going to go if I can't help them here? Where are they going to go? If a church can't help them and employ them, where are they going to go to get their life back in order? And again, I'm not kicking against my authorities. They're the boss, but it's just one of those things that it's a heart issue for me, because I've got a heart for these guys to try to help them get their life back in order a little bit.
We've been able to bring them on as long as there aren't issues in their background that are specific to children and things like that. So I just hired somebody who had drug possession charges and went to prison for a period of time due to that. However, there's no reason. She's been outside of it for 15 months, and she has a couple of mentors within the church who recommended her for employment. So what we did as part of our internal condition of employment for her was if we see any concerns, we need you to give us permission in writing that we can reach out to your mentors. Because I'm not in a position to be able to work with her through whatever she's going through. And honestly, I just don't, I don't, it's not that I don't have the same heart, Lee. I know you have a great heart. I just don't, that's not my gifting. So I'm not the best person to do that. However, I know that her mentors are. So I can turn around, and if I see something that's concerning, I can reach out to the mentors. I'll handle it from an employee standpoint if there's something that impacts her ability to perform her job. However, but from another perspective, I can send her to the right people. So I'm grateful. We've had several different people within our facilities teams over the years who have had different things in their background. And you're right. This is the place they can go. And if we can give them something, if we can give them, help them with a trade or some additional things and get them started on the right path, we have the ability to even get them into the next stage should a long-term employment at Grace Family Church not be the best place. We have a lot of different people who go to Grace Family Church that own businesses, that if they have a period of time that they've had great employment with us, that we can turn around and refer them on for something else. So that's what we've done.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lee, I would say we've done community service hours for a lot of people. And one of our things is that there's one of our supervisors here. They're not employees. But we have done a 1099 for a few times where I'll bring you in, you're not in the children's area. This is the specific task that we're hiring you for so that you can get some experience, get off, get some money. And maybe this is a resume builder for you, but it's not going to be long-term. Like for instance, I had a guy trim every bush on our campus by hand, and he needed 120 community hours. And he was not somebody we would let in the building. With near the children, but he was outside doing landscaping. Somebody else was about to say something. I interrupted them.
I don't think so, Chris.
All right, well, then I would just add, Lee, that if your employee handbook has verbiage in it that leaves that door open just a little bit, then you do pressure your bosses and say, hey, the door is a little open right here. Can you work with me on this one employee? So that handbook verbiage that says, yeah, we do background checks, but that doesn't disqualify anybody. It just, we do them so we know what their history is. And so I've been able to get past that. We hired a guy that we ended up, my maintenance supervisor wanted to hire him, and I'm the one who said, no, I don't want you to do that. And he begged, and I said, okay, then you're the one that's going to fire him. You're the one that's going to take his keys away. And after about 6 months, it was time. And the maintenance supervisor just held his hand out one day and said, it's time, turn your keys in. And this guy knew it. He had we gave him a chance, but he had burned his bridges.
Yeah, it's not impossible. I mean, I've met FM in the NACFM who's spent time in jail. I mean, it's not unheard of. It really just depends on the church leadership, the crime in question, and the rules governing school districts. I mean, I've been grateful. I haven't had to deal with that. Closest thing I got to school kids was homeschoolers, and they policed themselves. They just used our gym. So anyways, felt bad for them. I used to go to school, hate gym. They went to homeschoolers, didn't have to do gym, and then their parents brought them into our gym and made them do gym. So anyways, any other comments or concerns on Lee's question? All righty. Anybody having trouble hiring a maintenance technician or figuring out how much to pay him or her? Chris, yeah, I know you like the bobbing dog in the back of the Chevrolet.
I think for us, we started off, we had a position available originally that was full-time, part-time, and nobody was catching on to it. And then we put one, and when I say nobody, I mean for 9 months we had it out there and there was no one biting. And then we put one out for full-time. We had one bite, and again, another 9 months, 6 to 9 months passed by and nobody. And I think just right now, what we're seeing, and our contractors are also seeing, is that there's an issue just hiring right now as a whole, especially for the type of work and role that we're asking for. It's been a challenge. And for us specifically, we're not even at this point having any sort of education needed. We just want an able body. If that's, we're just, anybody, you got 2 hands, they work. Let's, we can help you, we can train you through it. But where we're at right now, it's very challenging for us to find a role. Where we're at right now located, if you've been anywhere near a newspaper, we've got Samsung coming in, we've got Tesla coming in, we've got Apple coming in, we've got Amazon coming in. And so, having that price, ticket in comparison to what they're offering has also been a challenge in that. So.
Yeah, I think the reason I bob my head so much is that when you put maintenance technician on a job description right away, they're looking for that $5 to $10 more than what anyone else is offering. But then they need to come with skills. And so there's an entire generation that has no skills. And even the guys who we would think have computer skills, they only know 1 or 2 games, so it's like, I'm struggling. what I started doing is just really great training, as I was mentioning to Sean before. I train my guys. I'm not afraid to show them anything. We do the plumbing, we do the electrical, we chip out concrete floors. We'll do everything. And it's just, my guys then become very desirable to other groups. So I've lost 4 of my maintenance guys to one HVAC contractor in 3 years. And I said, this is getting personal. Okay. I train them and you steal them. And he doubles their pay instantly from what I'm paying these guys. But as I was telling Lara a while back, I really started recruiting from the youth group. And what we do is we bring those kids in as our setup crew to start with. And that gets them exposed to facilities and seeing what behind the scenes means. And then we'll train them on being a part-time sound guy for gig rigs. And they'll learn custodial from the custodial supervisor. And then if we like what we see, we move them to the maintenance team and we begin to train them technically on maintenance stuff. And so by the time they've done a year in maintenance, they're ready to move on. I mean, somebody's going to snag them because they've been so exposed to just showing up to work and clocking in. And they're not afraid to open up a panel, and look inside. And they've heard some of the terminology, like the word multimeter. So I'm losing them. But I think the question being asked here kind of is, what do you pay them? And I know we've talked in the past about the Bureau of Labor Statistics and trying to find that sweet spot on what's going to, it's just like trying to sell anything. It's supply and demand.
Yeah, unfortunately for us, I don't have to hire too many people, which is good, but I don't even have the option to do the youth group. We're in a very affluent suburb of Dallas. So 95% of these kids go to college, so they're not looking for a trade after high school. So and most of them don't work in school anyway. So that's a challenge. We end up more with retired guys that are coming out of another career that want to do something and help the church, and they don't necessarily need to make a lot of money.
Emily, one of the things you said that you were looking and you just need somebody with 2 hands or whatever. One thing you don't want to do, and this is by experience, is hire out of desperation, because it's easy to hire them, but it's not easy to unhire them. And so we've learned that. I've learned that a couple times over the years.
To jump on that, Jeff, and
I think
my
he's
project
talking about me. I don't want to let you go, Tori.
My project manager and I were talking about his last 2 hires that kind of failed pretty miserably. And I said, well, you've probably learned personally and in reality now that you hire slow and fire fast. And that's a tough thing to do. But to Jeff's point, you definitely don't want to hire out of desperation. And we're here in Colorado where, I'm paying guys $25 an hour and I can't even get them to look at a job. And much like you guys, we're not looking for guys that are skill specific. We're willing to train, but we do hire for character. And that's a big deal, is we definitely look at character and we make sure that they're going to be a good fit for our team, because if they're not, it's just going to be painful for everybody.
One of the things I'm grateful for here is at Celebration, we have very intentional core values that we literally run everything on, from where we set up a space to who we hire and how we hire. And one of those things is excellence in all things. So even our hiring process, what does that look like? Like, yes, we need this now, but is this the most beneficial thing for us right now? Is this the most, like, where's their character? Like you said, Eric, where's their character? Who are they? That kind of thing is definitely part of that.
We have a tool we use, which is, and I know that there's a zillion ones out there, but a specific tool called I Am, where each of our major employees, generally not our part-time staff, but our full-time team, they take a personality test. What I think of myself, and then what other people think of me, and then we come back. It goes through a process, and it comes back with what is called a communique that really details that person. It's scarily accurate. When I got mine, I just about freaked out. because of the questions. The questions didn't even come anywhere near what I would thought the end product turned out to be. But that has actually allowed me to, when I sit down and interview with somebody, I'll get excited that there's, they've got all of the qualifications. You're right. We're in a need, we go for it. But then we'll do the communique and really see what makes that person tick, who they are at the core. Because unfortunately, I have had a couple of times where I've hired people that from a couple of interviews didn't really give me the good picture of who that person was, and how they operated. So could have the skill set, but really how they operate, how they deal with management, how they prefer to lead, how they prefer to work, directed, not directed, all of this kind of stuff. And then found that they just weren't good fits for the team. And it led to a lot of horrible feelings when it didn't work out. So this has really been an amazing tool, because I can look at it and go, yep, that's not going to work. I'm going to want to fire that person way too quickly, and I'll feel bad about it. So that helps a lot and gives me something other than my own intuition to go by. So.
We use a tool like that as well, Laura. We use Test Gorilla, and it's something that we can do a skills assessment, but also it's got 2 different personality tests. One of them that we use is Enneagram, and then we also use the DISC test. And then it's got a four total tests that we use. The last one is actually a culture test. And we kind of describe all of our culture, our company personality, and they do the same thing. And we know right away if they're a culture fit as well. So I definitely back Laura up on the use tests. It's a good way to check the water, so to speak.
Typically, you can train skills, but you can't change character.
That's a fact, Jack. Well, I think we covered that one pretty well. Good feedback, everybody. All right, Jeff, you're up. You had a question.
Yeah, I had a question. Being Tori and I are hosting the national conference coming up next year in Colorado. I have a gentleman that's going to be giving a presentation. His name is Craig Cable, and he's a director of ministry, safety, and strategic partnership. We always talk about security at our national conferences every year, because some things change from year to year as far as security and how you do it and what happens. He works with our insurance company, which is Brotherhood Mutual, and he actually works with many churches across 6 or 7 state region, and he does de-escalation. He does training. We did a little bit that last year in Chicago. But I just was curious if I could get some input from you all regarding security. What might you be looking for? What are you missing? What do you need to put in your tool belt to bring it to your your boss, and what do you need to do? So does anybody have any? It's something that he could maybe address at the national conference.
I'd like to hear more about the de-escalation.
No, you don't. Oh.
I want to practice hand-to-hand takedowns.
I think for me specifically, we have a lot of construction projects going on where we're working with a lot of outside contractors and vendors. And what kind of guidelines, parameters, or precautions can you take in preparation for a project to begin? I'm talking about work hours. Are they doing, night work? What are those parameters that you give them? How do you control access to a building? What are you looking for those kind of things? That would be really good in that instance of how do you navigate those, because you don't, for some of those construction companies, you have no idea who's entering your building.
Right.
And so how do you navigate that?
Great question.
I'm struggling with finding a decent locking mechanism for having to do a lockdown on our classrooms and things like that in case of active shooter. So there's so many different ones out there. We purchased some for some of our campuses. My security officer who selected them decided he doesn't like them because of how they install. We're building a new campus right now. So really trying to find something that makes sense, isn't dangerous, because with what we have, you got to keep it out of the, in a particular height so it can be reached, but not too high so that the kid, yeah, all kinds of different things. So it'd be interesting to hear what some of the different options are out there, what's recommended.
One of the things that was brought up in a national conference a few years back, and there's brothers in another state, I can't remember what state, but they were officers, and they came up with something. It's called Anchorman.com. Anchorman.com, and it's a device that's pretty square.
I'm holding it up, Jeff.
Huh? Oh, Tori's holding it up. So what you do is you mount it at the bottom of the door. You drill a hole in the floor, and without having to go outside the classroom, you just step on that bolt and it locks that door. It just keeps that door from opening. We purchased a couple hundred of them, and the police officers have access to a tool that slides under the door that hits a button that releases that deadbolt. But it goes into the floor, an inch and a half, 2 inches. It's fast. I've looked at a lot of them, that the sleeves that go over the door openers, the door closures. I just see.
I love that. For it. I love that. However, I have a small problem.
Uh-oh.
All of our classrooms, our young child classrooms, have half doors, on an internal half door and then an outer full door. So I can't put that on the door, on the half door, because it's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
So, and I can't put it between the half door and the full door. So I have to put something that doesn't go into the ground in those spaces.
Do you keep all that for nothing open all the time?
What was that?
You keep the half door open all the time?
No, they do. Yes. During the class times, they almost always keep those open. So you're right. I could have them open it and then turn around and lock it. It's just an extra step. So
let me say on that topic, I don't, we may be getting into the weeds, but that gives Jeff some stuff to think about. Our host in Houston, they use just generic deadbolts. And the deadbolt they added was a key that only certain people had. And so the people on the inside of the room can just quickly spin the deadbolt. And then the only people who can unlock that are those who have that special key. So facilities would have the key, and you might issue the key in the Knox box, and the fire department can get to it. But that exists at every hardware store. And you could put 2 deadbolts on your half doors, one at the bottom, one at the top. So there's 2 quick turnbuckles, and then it's accessible from the outside. But the example Tori gave, the right perpetrator would bring his own Slim Jim, but the deadbolt, that would just be a lot harder to overcome in those cases. And what our host in Houston also did was they put a special dot above those doors, different colored dots throughout the building. And so if a room had that dot, you could run in there and turn the deadbolt because you knew what the dot meant. And some rooms would have 3 different colors, one for hurricane, tornado, lockdown. But the deadbolt was a much quicker, easy option that you can buy anywhere.
Yeah, we went even more low rent, Laura. We took just thin magnetic strip, like you get a sheet of, and we mount them on the door frame. And the teachers in our academy keep the doors locked throughout the day, but they slide the magnet down over the catch. So the door still stays shut because there's tension. But if there's a lockdown, they just open the door, slide the magnet out, and shut the door. Nobody has to get a key out.
thank you, gentlemen.
So did we answer Jeff's question though on security? Because you know, if they had some mats we could throw each other around on, right?
Come on, Chris, let's go for it.
Oh, all right. Now, I was going to add to Jeff's question, though, about the security topic, and now I've forgotten what it was. Oh, the green dot. Have you ever heard of the green dot system? We talk about, some people call it a blue light or a blue button. What's that called, where it's a silent alarm? Is that the type of system? I was looking at maybe having a Vonage paging number in-house, where everyone with our Vonage internal calls, there would be a separate paging number that you could call to say, I need help in the front office, but it doesn't ring anywhere. And what that might look like. So I know in some school buildings, they have the blue button in the hallway or something like that. Now, oh, to Lara's example, I was reminded that our host in Milwaukee, Chuck Weathers, what they ended up doing was a lockdown of zones of the building. So all those half doors were hard to manage, but that entire nursery had its own hard lockdown end of hall doors. And the welcome desk girl could hit a button and it shut down the whole zone of the building. So the hall, those like 15 classrooms were all locked down at the same time, even though the individual classroom may not be.
That's a novel idea.
Yeah, sorry, I had to step out there for a minute, take a phone call, and I missed part of that. But maybe if the conference, could we have an access control expert that can actually kind of explain some of that stuff to us and what it takes to set up the buildings with those lockdown doors?
We do have access control, and we actually have a panic button in each of our nurseries and school offices. It's a red button. They lift up the cover, they push it, and it actually deactivates the card reader from parents, the volunteer, from staff. Because if you have an active shooter inside the building, you don't want anybody coming in. And so it deactivates those. However, I do have them, all the police officers in Arvada have a fob, or many of them do, that they have access to it. But my staff, besides Tori and I, my boss, we will have access, but everybody else's, that panic button shuts everything down. But we do have a control company that we work with. I don't know if it matters if they're national or not. Maybe just some tips like you said, Ken.
Yeah, I've been shopping for the last 6 months for a different control system, and it's apples and oranges all the way along. It's hard to compare them all and what they're doing.
I'll reach out to them and see if that can happen. Anybody else?
You got enough to work with, Jeff?
Well, you never have enough to work with.
Well, I'll ask a question just because I used to have it at our church. And I don't know, because I'm not a church facilities guy anymore. It's like quit cleaning toilets when I was 16 at my church. But we had a very, very fast growing church that had people semi-frequently come in and want to challenge things or have their say at the front, sometimes interrupting baptisms or some standing in front of the pulpit and giving their own little diatribe. Is that something that you guys have to deal with as facilities guys? Are you guys responsible for that kind of security also?
We do. Our team is well aware of people trying to gain access to the podium or to our senior pastor. We have security people throughout the auditorium or through our worship center. I don't know if anybody else has dealt with that. I mean, we hear stories about somebody walking in all the way up to the pulpit with a gun, and
Okie
Sounds
dokie.
like nobody else has experienced it. Okay, good.
Well, had one special event where the lady was speaking out against the Muslims and the treatment of women. And my own sound tech got tackled by the state troopers that were undercover protecting her because he walked up to change her battery in her microphone without telling anybody. But she never skipped a beat because they took him down, drug him right out, and but it definitely happens.
Yeah. We had a prayer team that the pastor would call on if he saw something from the stage and like, hey, we got some guys over here that want to pray with you. And we would, because I was on that team. That's why I was asking.
That's a good safe word.
For us, we don't specifically, facilities or maintenance does not oversee that part. However, we work closely in the same area with our, what we call campus support, AKA security. And it's actually a group of volunteer driven men who are formerly or currently law enforcement that volunteer their time. And so they have placement, they have strategy, they have everything ready in place for something like that. They're placed throughout the entire building whenever something is going on. And then during non-event kind of driven moments, our actual director is overseeing that, like, regular office hours, those kind of things.
And that's what our team was made up of. I mean, a couple cops and me being a 6'7" ogre.
We had a lady a couple weeks ago who was heckling our pastor who was preaching. It was fantastic. As she was yelling Wakanda forever. I can't make that up. So that was dealt with appropriately. And she showed up again this past week. And so they dealt with that appropriately too.
We've talked, Eric, on the past a lot about this topic and had that training. The last three conferences have been heavy security training, and our FMs have to manage the hard structure that provides a lot of that security. So how is the stage appropriate? How are the chairs lined up? Where are the exits located? And so even if we're not on those teams, many of our facilities managers are involved in working with those teams, as Emily said. So I've been on the team a lot, and I know Jeff and Tori had talked more that they're more involved than some other church FMs are. But we have to deal with the things that might provide the building security, cutting bushes back, preventing a car from crashing through the front door, those kind of things.
To my own benefit, my completely biased perspective is also parking lot lighting at that point, because that's a safety thing.
We hire police officers off duty that come uniformed, and we also have our own safety team. We started about 2 years ago providing radios for the parking lot guys, because they're the first contact with these people. They can give us a heads up as they approach the building. So and it's all about training. We have an amazing company that we work with, that we do active shooter training, de-escalation, range shooting training, and it's a lot of it's about training and making sure your guys are up to date with all the information they need to do their ministry right.
Something I know our team here does for sure is they have a watch list. And so our parking team, who is another set of volunteers, they're not by any means on this security team, but as they're welcoming people in, if they see a car that person is driving, or if they see the person themselves driving another vehicle, they immediately on that radio that they've been given communicate to our campus support team, say, hey, he's here, he's pulling into the property. And so they're able to assess it even before it enters into the building. So it's a really good thing.
That's great. We also network with a lot of churches around here on a website that if they have issues at their church, if they have somebody disruptive or vandalism or an aggressive person, it's shared with everybody. So we all see pictures, we all get the information. It's great benefit for us.
Communication, that's what it's all about. One form or another. Speaking of communications, because that was the last question we had on our list of people who signed up. My question to you all is, have you recently seen an email from your board about proposed bylaw changes? And did you know that it is now up for a vote? If you haven't voted, please do so. This is your chance to influence and, kind of make history in a way. Not that it's earth shattering. We need everybody's participation. Chris, I think that about does it, sir.
That's all I have as well. I believe that unless there's any final things, we have spent well of an hour together, and I really appreciate our time. I'm excited that we have this many come to our roundtables, and our discussion is good, and everyone gets to jump in. We really want your input, and as Lara had indicated to Sean, evidently, and he made that comment at the very beginning. Thank you. She's our new salesperson. That this is the kind of things we do to support each other as facilities managers, uniquely at campuses that have churches on them and schools. So really excited to have this discussion. So thank you. So
sign up for the national conference. We'll see you in Colorado.
So yes,
yeah, now's the time.
Tori and Jeff are going to host us again in Colorado, and the committee that is putting together the national conference is really excited about getting to go back out to Colorado and spend time with those guys and be hosted out there. So look forward to that. So please register for that. Our board is working. Uh-oh. So we'll get to see what the other side of Tori's office looks like over there.
Yeah, I got your bins back there.
Yeah. What's good? It's been good for me, Homer. Spend time with FMs this afternoon.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. It was informative.
All righty, folks. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you. See all you guys. All right.
Appreciate
bye-bye.
it. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Chris.